Hi everyone, Cody here. So if you look closely outside, you might be able to see that it is snowing. And it is snowing in late April. Now I've already seen people posting on social media that this is a sign that global warming is a hoax. Well, the thing is, if you take a packet of seeds, look at the back, and for this one, cucumbers, it says that plant seeds only after all danger of frost is past. And then it gives us a nice little handy chart, and you look at your location on the map relative to where you are in the country, and it says to plant them late May through June. That means that given hundreds of years worth of agricultural and weather data, the people who are making these seed packets have recommended that you plant them late May through June, which means late April, we should definitely still be expecting to see frosts. It may not have done that in the last 10 years, but that means that in the last 10 years, it has been warmer than it has been over the last 100. Just throwing that out there. So anyway, the reason I'm making this video is a response to an open letter that was done for me by a flat earther. Now, I've dealt with these people before, and I know that they make these videos intentionally to insult my intelligence enough to get a response from me and hopefully a link to their channel so they can get some of my viewers. That is not going to happen. But I will say something, because this person happens to have a fairly large number of subscribers, and in the last week I have received over 600 private messages on the subject. And many of them recently have been calling me out for not having a response, saying that I must be wrong because I haven't responded to this, when I have in fact been intentionally ignoring it. So let's have a look at this video, shall we?
They are only about a quarter of a mile away from where we were when I shot this. I shot this image from right about here. This is where we were looking across, and this is the area right here where those people were walking. And the boat, as you could tell by the size of the people on the boat, wasn't too much further beyond that. So maybe a half mile to a mile, or at the most, I would say, away. So I'm just a little over a half mile away, and look at the size of the tower as compared to the car that was diagonally in front of me. We were looking at this Willis Tower from this direction right here when we were on the other side of the lake. Now, okay, so let me slide the car over and shrink it down to the appropriate scale beside the boat. Do you see something rather interesting here? This building is significantly magnified. The atmosphere really is acting like a lens. What type of lens? A convex lens or a magnifying glass.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You have a picture of a car in front of a building. The building's half a mile away from the car, and the car is about 10 to 20 feet away from you. And the car appears the same size relative to the building as if you had the car 1 to 1.5 miles away and the building 46 miles away. And the reason for this is because of atmospheric lensing. Well, by that logic, this bucket in my room is also magnified by the air. No, I just don't think you quite understand how perspective works. Here's a little short refresher course for you.
These are small, but the ones out there are far away. Small, far away.
So anyway, atmospheric lensing. That is a thing. The mirage effects are a type of atmospheric lensing. So I will humor that. What would it take to form an atmospheric lens? Well, in order to get a lens, you have to have a region inside of your medium air that has a higher or lower density, thereby slowing down light and causing it to bend. You see, when you have an object releasing light, the light expands out in all directions. And the farther away it is, the more that light spreads out. Now, if you have that light hit something that is a high density relative to the medium it's traveling in, and if the object is roughly spherical or convex in a lens shape, then the light will bend in from all directions, being focused onto a single point. Now the observer will see the light coming in from a wide angle coming into a single point, and to the observer, that appears like the object is very large and close by. So how could we get such a mass in the air that would deflect the light? Well, you mentioned water vapor, which makes sense because water does normally bend light. Water normally has a higher density than the air, and so light hitting it will bend towards the center of a water droplet, for instance, and will act as a lens. But if you take that same bit of water and evaporate it, or boil it, or turn it into a gas, that gas expands a lot. And when you do that, it decreases its density. In fact, its density decreases so much that it becomes less dense than air. You ever wonder why steam rises and why clouds are way up in the sky? It's because water vapor is less dense and it rises up. And then it condenses and forms the heavy clouds, which eventually comes back down as rain. So this means if you have a large amount of water vapor, say over top of a lake, the light would not get bent towards the water vapor like a lens. It would rather get bent away and dispersed, which would make it more difficult to see the object at all. Maybe if you could argue that there's a mass of very cold air in front of me, then maybe I would humor the idea. So the last point that was made is the smokestack being on a curved surface, you're expecting it to have leaned, right? Because, on a curve, something that's going straight up relative to the curve in one spot is not going to be straight up to another person somewhere else. And this is true. The smokestack should lean. But which direction would it lean? Well, that way. It would be leaning away from the observer. And the amount that it's leaning would be very little. Over about 30 miles, probably less than a degree of tilt, which would be completely unmeasurable for me, especially because it's leaning in the direction that is hardest for me to measure. So in conclusion, I'd like to point out that I didn't mention at any point that I was trying to prove that the Earth was round. I was assuming that the Earth was round, and I was attempting to figure out how round it was. And I wanted to do this using relatively simple equipment that anyone could obtain. Also, I wanted to try out my new telescope. I didn't want to just look at a table and see the Earth has this radius. I wanted to confirm it myself. If you want to point out something that I did wrong, then I welcome it. In fact, I actually re-uploaded the video because people pointed out some things that I did wrong with my explanation. What I expected the flat earthers to go after is something that I didn't actually know for certain. Say the height of the layer of low density gas that was causing the mirage. I argued that it was only a few inches to feet thick, but perhaps you would say that because of water vapor, the low density layer is, say, a few hundred feet thick or 800 feet thick. And since my horizon is the top of this layer, I would not be able to see 800 feet below it. That is the argument that I expected you to make, and I would concede to that. I need to know more. I don't know how thick that layer was. I would need to go out and do some tests and maybe fly a little plane and do some temperature measurements and water vapor count, and it gets quite complicated at that point. But I could, in theory, do it. I could figure out how thick that layer is and then account for it. But no, you had to go make something up like atmospheric lensing. So there you go. So anyway, I hope the rest of you got something out of this, even if it was just a little bit of a laugh. And hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.
Small, far away.